ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the What Now Show. I am your host, Suryansh Basumalik, and joining me today on the What Now Show is another guest. He is the Kraken Juan Adams, joining us from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's in the gym right now. He's staying in the gym. Juan, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing great, man. Can't complain too much.
Brilliant, brilliant. So Juan, of course, you're in the gym right now, and how's training been? With lockdown and everything, have you been developing yourself as a fighter? What's this whole lockdown period been like?
It's actually been really beneficial for me, especially living here in the gym. Even when everything was shut down, since I live here, I could always get work in. I could always do a one-on-one session with either of the coaches and all that. The biggest thing we've been doing is kind of trying to switch my style back from when I got to the UFC. I kind of tried to switch to more of a striker, counter striker, volume striker type of guy, and going back more so to just being a pressure fighter and moving forward all the time, really setting up my wrestling and my grappling a lot more. So I'm really excited about that. It's been super beneficial. I've actually had 3 fights fall through, so it's been interesting.
Right. Now, let's get working on this, of what you said from the ground up, right? You said you're living in Jackson Wink right now, Jackson Wink, the gym where Juan Adams trains. We spoke with the general manager last year, early in the last episode, my apologies, with Michael Lyubimov. And, he spoke about how multiple fighters are staying in the gym. So when it comes to the facilities offered in the gym, when it comes to, the kind of atmosphere you're working around, and then of course heading into camp about a few meters away from where you are staying right now, what's the whole process like? Is it something you've blended into very well? What's that whole process been like?
It's been really good. It reminds me a lot of college. I wrestled in college, and I went to a military college, so it was the dorms where everything was community showers. It's actually a little bit nicer than the dorms I had in college. I've got my own room here. Got to set up a kitchen, my own bathroom, and all that. So that's been really nice, and it's good to just be able to go and knock on somebody's door and ask if they want to get some work in. You can look here even 9, 10 p.m. at night. There's always people doing something. Even on the weekend when there's no organized classes, there's people that get together in groups and do everything they're supposed to do there.
Right, right. You're quite interesting. So, you spoke about, your how you've been developing a game ever since lockdown started. You spoke of yourself as a volume striker, and throughout your fights, whether it be in the commentary or your own assessment after your fights, you spoke of there's been a lot of questioning with regards to your cardio, different attributes in your skills. So when you're thinking about what aspects of your game you've developed, what have you made a point to make sure that you've honed it to the best of your abilities, and what are you looking forward to going into when developing yourself as a well-rounded fighter?
Obviously we're developing the conditioning a lot more. There's more running. Even in my pad sessions, we focus a lot on cardio and being able to keep up output and power into the later rounds. I stopped lifting weights as much and really focused a lot more on plyometric things, and really just body weight stuff, being able to support my own weight for longer periods of time, as being able to push shorter or push heavier weight for less amount of time. So it's been a process for sure. We focus obviously a lot on the technical aspects of striking, developing my kicks a lot more to where I'm not just a volume puncher or relying on hurting my opponent. We want to be able to technically pick someone apart before we take them down and finish the fight. So that's what we're working on a lot here. And a lot of the stuff for me was mental. When I was in the UFC, it was a point of a lot of turmoil in my life, and just getting past all that, being away from everything, being isolated out here has been really beneficial in my training and everything. Very many fewer distractions, many fewer distractions here. And another thing too is just I got a job outside of fighting where I found purpose again, and that's really been beneficial for me as well. Just not being in fight mode all the time. It's just not good for me.
Right. Interesting. So, you've immersed yourself very deeply into the fight game and into the fight game. Living in the gym. You're working on honing your skills quite a bit, and you can tell that because you're living in the gym, you're getting your sessions in. You can tell that you're putting in the work. Now, having immersed yourself so deeply into MMA and focusing your life solely on it, and you spoke about getting a job and outside of the MMA, outside of the MMA business, and to focus on other aspects of your life. Is that something that's been missing ever since you've been staying solely and working out of solely the gym? Is there something that's been missing ever since, or has life pretty much been normal ever since you moved into the gym?
It's not even since necessarily moving to the gym. Once I won my contender series fight, all I did was fight. All I did was train all the time. I was spending 5, 6 hours a day training, and then I would come home, and my roommate was my strength and conditioning coach. So like, I never really got away from the fighting. And then when I moved out here, you know, I would train all day, yeah, but then I could come to my room and just kind of decompress and unload. And there was still something missing. So when I went and I applied and I got the full time job, it really limits my free time. But at the same time, it gives me, a life to think about outside of this, outside of the fighting. And
Mm.
there's so much more to life than simply what you do. So that was a big part of me is, finding that identity and that aspect of myself outside of what I do. And even though I did find another, it's a full time job. I work 40 hours a week. It still gives me a chance to go there and be someone else for a little bit, or cultivate different aspects of my personality, different aspects of my being. And that's good because when you don't address certain aspects of yourself, it locks you into this character that you always have to be. And that's just not healthy.
Yeah, interestingly enough, you can tell that how you've developed your personality from watching your interviews initially when back in like 2015 after you had that victory against Chris De La Rocha, and you were kind of quieter back then. You weren't talking much when you were asked questions, and your few appearances in the media since. However, afterwards, whether it be a social media or any other social media appearances or whenever you've been speaking, you're far more flexible with your personality, and you're far more uh, far more free with whatever you say. You speak your mind a lot more. You can be yourself a little more. So is it the experience and the amount of time that you've spent in the MMA industry that attributed to how you've been able to go from this uh, stiff someone who was stiff personality wise to a lot more lot freer eventually?
No, I've always been like I am now. If you look at my interviews in college, or you ask any of my college teammates, I was always, a fun-loving guy. It's just that I was so stressed at first when I first got there. There was a lot of pressure, and though I didn't want to show that it was getting to me, it was still affecting me. I didn't like interacting with people a whole lot because everywhere I went, it was the same 5 or 6 questions, and you just get tired of it. But being away from all that and moving to a new environment and being able to just express myself more. And another really big thing is just I kind of just stopped listening to a lot of critics or a lot of people that were always trying to tell me how to live my life or what I needed to do, what type of personality, what type of behavior I needed to cultivate and be, and just focused on doing whatever I wanted. I've already gotten the validation and the external things that I wanted out of life, but now I just focus on being a more authentic me and always emanating myself, and being, 100% authentic to myself and who I am and what I want to do, as opposed to, trying to do what the MMA community is going to receive or feel is best, and that's a really big part of it. And that's a really big thing that was making me unhappy for so long.
Right. Interesting, because yeah, you did speak about how you've been focusing more on being able to express yourself, keeping a calmer mindset. What element stayed in your head most of this time to help you get into focus? What was the one thing that you went to whenever you wanted to calm down or whenever you wanted to focus on? What was the main element that stayed fixated on your head to help you get focused and calmer than you were before, when you were stressed?
The biggest element has really been just exploring my spirituality more. Really connecting with the people around me a little bit more, and just kind of finding purpose outside of fighting. Really asking myself those questions. What type of mark do I want to leave upon the world? Who can I help while I'm here? What can people take away from my journey that might help them somewhere down the road? And you know, um, it also came with addressing a lot of things, a lot of the bad habits and bad cycles that I was committing in my own day to day life. When I had to address those and be really honest about that, and kind of overcome them and make a conscious effort not to repeat the same cycles that I was doing that were giving me the results that I didn't want.
What were some of these vicious cycles that you were looped into, when you were coming up early on? You spoke on social media about, how you tried to make changes to, help boost yourself up, but it was a bit too late eventually. So, when you look back on these vicious cycles that you got trapped in and you had to work out of it, what were these cycles that you got trapped in, and how did you get yourself to break out of it and say that I have to stop this and look consider my future? Did someone help you realize, did something help you realize that you need to get your act together, as you said?
A really bad cycle for me was always women, dude. As much as people want to say, when you're with people that don't really enhance your purpose, um, it doesn't affect your life very well. And for me, it was always one of those things where I I viewed my sexual relationships, and I viewed that stuff as from a state of conquest. In my head, growing up, I was always kind of a chunky kid. I was a little awkward. I always did whatever I wanted to do, but I didn't really have the confidence in myself to to just be content by myself. So what I did is I took about 6 to 8 months where I just focused on me. I didn't date. I didn't sleep with anyone. I stopped drinking for a little bit, and just really focused on implementing some coping mechanisms and some strategies to enhance my life as opposed to take my energy away. And so I stopped kind of interacting with people where it was an energetic drain for me. Um, and the biggest energy drain for me was always women. My manager and my friends, they'll all tell you this. Just like, I love women. It is what it is. I love them. So uh, I had to kind of separate myself from them for a while and just really, you know, get my habits and my daily routine together to where, independent of if a woman was in my life or not, it didn't really affect me so much. And then once I got there, I kind of reintroduced them, but my whole interaction is a little different now. It got to a point where like anytime something bad happened to me or something that I categorize as bad happened to me, I would go and within 2 or 3 weeks I would sleep with three or four different women, and that's not healthy. One, and obviously I was getting tested and everything, making sure I was clean, but uh, that's just not that's not a pattern for success. So I just stopped that and really focused on some self development. Really explored my spirituality more. I started just educating myself on different practices, different religions, and things like that, and I kind of became a hobby of mine. And that exploring that made me overall, I feel like, a better person. And that when I kind of calmed down and became more confident in myself, and not necessarily confident but more content with myself, and happy, and recognizing the things that I had done as opposed to the things that I hadn't, it made me a lot more content as a person, and it just made me happier. And so I'm chiller now. I don't go out. I don't seek things. I just do what comes, and I'm happy with whatever presents itself. I take every opportunity that presents itself to me.
Well, after his successes socially, Juan Adams has moved to his successes professionally, and coming back to MMA again. Uh, what attracted you first to mixed martial arts, and why did you choose to focus on it early back in high school with your wrestling? And what made you realize that I want to get into the UFC? I think I do really well here. What encouraged you, what motivated you to move that far up and focus solely on this?
So, I started wrestling in high school, really just because it was something new that I hadn't done before, and I thought I could be good at. And I always liked to fight. I got into a lot of fights in high school, so they figured wrestling would take away some of that aggressive energy. But I look back, and I always wanted to be a professional athlete. I've been playing sports since I was 3 years old. I was in always in season, always playing some type of sport, competing in some way. And then when I got to high school, it really started with a lot of people saying that I couldn't be successful at it, with wrestling. And so biggest thing for me was just proving those people wrong. Like, yeah, I can do this. So in high school, I took fifth in state my senior year, all American at the Disney duels. And a lot of people said I couldn't compete at the collegiate level, so I did it. The first Division 1 school that asked me to go there, I accepted. I went and I competed Division 1. And then after that, we were all watching UFC one day at my coach's house. We were watching the fights, and I was doing my wrestling. I was wrestling at the wrestling program of an MMA gym, so I was already helping a lot of the fighters there with their wrestling. And one of my teammates was just talking crap to me one day, and didn't think I could do it. So I was like, "Yeah, I can. I'll go fight after this. Whatever. I don't care." So I graduated, and right when I graduated, the Colts called me, so I had an NFL tryout. And during that process, I just realized that I really don't like football. So I I started training in MMA again, and a lot of people didn't even think I could make the weight limit. So I took my first amateur fight because they're like, "Oh, well, you couldn't even make 265." So I did it just to prove that I could, and then it was fun. So I just kept doing that, and um, a lot of people were like, "Well, you don't really have a future in this. You don't take it seriously enough." So I was like, "Screw it. I'm gonna make it to the UFC then." So I just did it because a lot of people didn't think I could, and also a lot of the fighters that I interacted with, like outside of my gym, they were douchebags. I didn't really like them, so I just wanted to do it before they did, and I did. So just to prove that I was better than them is something that they took more seriously than I did. And so yeah, and now it's one of those things where people don't think I'm a fighter, or they don't think I can hang, and they don't think I'm good enough. So I'm just gonna prove them all wrong again, and I'm gonna do it. Everyone's like, "Well, do you think you're gonna make it back to the UFC?" And I'm like, "Well, last time it only took me 2 years to do it, so I figured I can do it again whenever I want to, or whenever the opportunities present themselves." So at this point, it's just a matter of time. I get the fights, I get the opportunities, and I'm sure I'll be back someday. But right now, it's just about getting back out there, and it's a pride thing for me. It's a personal thing for me now because I need to, for my own pride, my own ego, my own sanity, finish this at the point that I told myself I would. I told myself I had a certain number of fights that I wanted to do as a professional. And when I reach that number, then I'll reevaluate everything. But right now, it's about getting to that number of fights.
Right. Now, from what you're telling me here, you can really tell that, you're a man of a huge competitive nature, aren't you? Because, from some guy telling you can't do it to, ending up doing it, from some, I wasn't interested in the NFL, went and got into the UFC. You're a very multi-talented person indeed. And, it's very admirable how you follow your interests to the best of your abilities. And that's something that multiple other people should try and move forward with themselves. And you spoke about the you again returning to the UFC, right? That brings me to one of the questions I wanted to ask you in the first place. Was ever since your initial release early last year, has there been any dialogue, or is there any level of consideration after what you do next, possibly moving back to the UFC? Is that something that's of interest, or do you want to work with other promotions first before you make such a decision?
If the UFC offered, I would obviously take it. But I was signed with Aries, which is a European and African based promotion,
Mm.
and due to COVID, they haven't had any events. So they gave me the green light to kind of fight for someone else or just take whatever presents itself right now because I want to be active. I want to do something. I don't want to be sitting on the shelf for a year and a half during the prime of my career, honestly. So that that is something that's it's on the table. Obviously, if they offer, I'll accept the fight. I'm in shape right now. Uh, I can make weight on 2 weeks' notice if I have to. So I'm ready to go. I just wanted to honor the obligations that I had. Right now, I'm talking to Fury Fighting Championship, which is where I started with my amateur
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. They said that they're looking for opponents for me. Whenever Aries starts up again, I'm sure I'll have a fight with them. So, right now I'm just at a point where I need ring time, I need cage time. So that's what I'm looking for.
It's very interesting because your stat line's just full of knockouts. Mostly they're all round one. Your debut was a second round knockout, and then it was just knockouts, knockouts, knockouts from there on out. So when you did speak about your power, and your stat line says speaks for itself when it comes to your striking abilities because of the number of KOs that you do have. And furthermore, when you're moving towards another fight, and you're looking for opponents, ideally if you were to plan out when your training camp, a certain date, when would you ideally want to have another bout?
Uh, right now, March 17th to March 27th would be ideal. After that works too, but just in terms of my timeline, I would like to fight 3 or 4 times this year. So the best way to do that would be to have a fight in March.
Right. Interesting. Because, you even did talk about how, you've been working on a lot of your cardio, you've been running, you've been doing a lot of exercise. And, when it comes to running, you do lose a lot of weight in the process. So do you still, when it comes to, you're a heavyweight now, but Do you want to stay in the heavyweights, or do you want to see if you're going to lose a bunch of weight and stick with something like the light heavyweights or the middleweights? Is that something you're interested in, or do you want to stick with where you're at?
Uh, that's not something that's possible, honestly. I've been body composition tested a few times. At 0% body fat, I would weigh 237 pounds. So there's no way I can ever make 205. But even right now, I'm at about 18% body fat, and I weigh 302 pounds. So it's not, it's not an issue of me being fat. It's just that, I'm a large, I've got a lot of mass on me. Part of that's been, I've been lifting weights since I was like 15. So I've put on a lot of muscle through that. And it's really hard for me to stay below 300 pounds. Even eating healthy, I have to be on a really strict diet to be at 290, and an even stricter diet to make 265. So it's but I know how to do it. I just there's no point in putting my body through that if I don't have a fight coming up.
Right. Interesting. And you did also talk about we were talking earlier about, the three fight skid that you had and your time in the UFC. Hopping back to that, you did talk about how, there was a failure in terms of the execution of the game plan and you felt that you could have done better in certain ways. And now that a lot of time's passed ever since those fights, and when I'm sure you've looked back at the replays once in a while, trying to look even your victories, looking at what you did right, what you did wrong, and where to move on from there, developing your game. When you look at, let's say, your Greg Hardy fight or your fight against Justin Tafa, um, what do you think you did wrong? Was it the bright lights that got to you? Was it a bit of nervousness, or what played into your head that stopped you from executing your game plan to the fullest as you trained in the camp?
With the Hardy fight, I was coming off of a loss in a fight that I felt I had won, and I was just so eager to get a win again, and I just rushed the game plan. I should have stayed on my feet a little bit longer before I shot in for that takedown, and obviously once I shot in, I should have let go, but I just reverted back to wrestling. You get in on a leg, you don't let it go, you keep going. And so that's all that happened in that one. And then with the Tafa fight, um, he landed a really good kick on my leg. It was like right at the knee, and it affected my ability to circle away from his power. Right, so I noticed that, and this all happened in the span of like half a second, but I did that. I tried to step, and I realized that I didn't cover as much distance as I normally would on that step. So I went backwards instead. And when I went backwards, my hands lowered, and that's when he landed the hook that got me and then followed it with an uppercut. And I wasn't out. I was still thinking, I was like, okay, go for the takedown now. But everything kind of slowed down, and I grabbed a leg. And then next thing I know, they the fight was called. So that one hurt, but it's just a failure in execution. Things happen, and I moved a way I shouldn't have moved, and that's all that is. I can't beat myself up over things, especially things that I can't change. I can't go back in time and change things. I can only focus on when the next opportunity presents itself, not repeating those mistakes.
So did you feel in either of those fights that the stoppage was premature, or did you feel that you just didn't have the right uh, you weren't doing the right things at the right time, and as you said, rushed a game plan and just got caught, or what was it?
With the Hardy one, I thought, you know, obviously on paper it says 31 unanswered strikes, so I can't call that an early stoppage, but there was no damage being done. Obviously, if I felt in danger, I would have moved. I didn't feel in any danger, but that's in the past. And then with the Tafa fight, I just felt I didn't do the right things at the right time, and I got caught. He's a powerful guy, obviously. So it's one of those things where each of those is different. And while I do feel that the stoppage was early in that fight, it's again looking back at the replay, it's a good stoppage from the ref's point of view. And I personally know the referees in both of those fights, and it's their job is to protect the fighters, and in their mind, that's what they were doing. So I'm not going to fault them for that, and I'm never going to bash either of them. In the Hardy fight, I had an emotional outburst afterwards, and immediately after, it was like the same night. I apologized to the referee. I apologized to the promotion. I apologized to my coaches. And then in the Tafa fight, while I was upset about the stoppage, I didn't even it didn't require an apology because I didn't have the outburst. I talked to the ref very casually afterwards. And I'm like, why'd you stop it? He told me why he stopped it. He's a friend of mine, and I'm like, all right, cool, man. Whatever, it is what it is. Um, Ultimately, I shouldn't have put myself in that position, and that's how I have to look at it. I have to take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for the things that happen to me. Because if I try and scapegoat that on other people, I'm never going to get that resolution.
Right, right. Interesting. And you've been in throughout all of your fights, you've other than that one fight against Arjan, you've either knocked people out or been knocked out, which speaks volumes about yourself as a fighter being an absolute engaging in absolute slugfests. And um considering how many of your fights have ended in the first round, you've knocked the guy down, and then you've had to think about how you have to rush the guy, or rush the guy, or he's rocked. You have to watch the distance, and then look forward to what strike to make, whether it's a hook or the uppercut or the overhand, and then when you want to engage in the ground and pound, and so on and so forth. So when, let's say for example, you've rocked any of the guys you did rock, or when you've knocked them down, what's going on in your head? Can you take an example of a fight? Do you remember what's going on in your head? How you were formulating what to do next? What was going on?
All that ever goes through my head is, inflict damage. Once I have someone dazed or whatever, I'm trying to not like I'm not trying to damage them, hurt them, so to speak, but I'm thinking like you constantly have to inflict damage. You think of it like a video game. I need to drain their power meter. I need to drain their stamina. I need to make everything, I need to do everything in a way that makes the next thing I do hurt them more. So that's what I'm thinking. I just want to constantly be on that person and not give them time to adjust or make a game plan or adjust for my power or anything. I'm just trying to go and get them out of there.
Right. And hopping over to a lighter note, let's move out of MMA for a bit and talk about Juan Adams. Who Juan Adams is other than just a fighter. You've spoken about how you've got a lot more free time. You're trying to focus on other things other than just MMA, right? And what are certain things that you like doing in your free time that develop your personality? What's fun for Juan Adams?
For me, I play a lot of Madden. I play a lot of Pokemon on my phone. I have emulators on my phone. I watch a lot of anime. My Hero Academia is my favorite one right now, but I'm also into Black Clover. That time I got reincarnated as a slime is kind of like my sleeper anime. But I watch a lot of anime theory. I go on YouTube. I study a lot of mythology. I look at the different mythologies behind many religions and stuff like that. Cryptozoology is a huge pastime of mine, and then Disney, huge Disney guy, and I like dogs a lot too. I love puppies, so I play with a lot of dogs. A lot of my friends here have dogs, so I'm always playing with them. Um, And then other than that, man, that's really it. You know, I consume a lot of media. I read a lot, and you know, listen to a lot of audiobooks. But that's pretty much it.
A fellow weeb and a dog lover. Interesting guy you
Yep.
are, Juan Adams. So, uh, what about films, music? Do you have you watched Star Wars? What interests you?
You know, I watched a lot of the Star Wars stuff, and obviously, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I watched the three newest ones. I did not like how Disney kind of
Yeah,
decanonized all the books. I read a lot into the Star Wars book universe up through the Yuzan Vong War. I followed a lot of Han and Leia's children in that one. So when the new Star Wars came out, I wasn't a big
bummed out as
fan of.
hell. Yeah.
I did not watch season 2 of The Mandalorian just because, you know, a couple of two of the main stars just they said a lot of really dumb shit on Instagram and so I was like, I'm not supporting this anymore. So there was that. Um, but yeah, man, and then the reading, you know, I've always been a sci-fi and fantasy guy. You know, my favorite author is Rob Salvatore, so I read a lot of the Drizzt Do'Urden saga and things
Yeah.
like that. I also was a big fan of Piers Anthony and his Xanth series. As a child, that always spoke to me a lot. And then you know that's really it. I read a lot of like silly stuff. Even in the more serious material I read, there's a lot of silly moments, and that's what I enjoy.
Interesting, interesting. Now, how about MMA? When you were growing up and watching the UFC, watching the fights, who interested you the most? Who were you a fan of? Who inspired you the most?
Honestly, man, I didn't watch a lot of MMA growing up. You know, obviously I watched the big stars. I loved Anderson Silva at that time. He was my favorite. Brock Lesnar was cool just because I love WWE. So I watched I watched Brock Lesnar, and other than that, man, you know, John Jones was someone I was always a fan of growing up. We're friends now, you know, but it's interesting to see all that. And then, you know, Aaron Pico, he was a huge, really big in the wrestling community. And I just remember being in like high school and college, even when I was in college, and my coaches were always just raving about Aaron Pico this, Aaron Pico that. Um, and I always watched him wrestle, dude. The dude was an absolute monster on the mat. Still is. Like, dude's still a monster. So that's really like the extent of my fandom. You know, one of my mentors now is Michael Guyman, so I went back and I watched some of his fights, and I love watching him fight too. Dude's just an animal.
Very interesting. And you did speak about how some people you liked in the MMA business becoming your friends now. So what's it like training with someone like John Jones? I'm sure you've met each other at the gym once in a while because you're both at Jackson Wink. You're there with multiple different talents who've shot up the rankings and so on and so forth. So what's it like training with these people? Holly Holmes or John Jones, Aaron Pico. What's it like? Suddenly meeting these guys in person. Like, does it itch the inner fan in you, or do you try to be a bit more professional? What's your mindset like?
Honestly, man, I always present myself 100%. So it's not like a fanboy moment. I look at it as, you know, we're coworkers, we're teammates, and we're just people. So I try to interact with them on that personal level. Um, I don't actually get like career advice or anything from them. We just talk about different stuff, you know, with Holly, we talk about like vacations. I play with her puppy. She got a really cute puppy. Our dog is actually like scared of me, which is funny. Like when I have my hair out in an afro, the dog will not go near me. Well, when I get the braids in and it's matted, I like the dog will let me pet it and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, where's the
Aaron,
afro?
huh?
Where,
Now I got braids in right
ah,
now, man.
okay.
It's Valentine's Day, so you know I had to. The ladies like it a little more when it's like this. You know, I had to I had to, get more presentable. But I'm actually taking these out today, so
Yeah.
the
So
fro's
from the
coming.
fan, from the fan in me, the afro did look better in my opinion. If that helps. So
Thank you, thank you.
yeah. So wrapping up. Before we do wrap up, I recommend you to watch One Punch Man if you haven't already.
I
But
already seen that one. That's a dope one.
yeah, yeah. But season two kind of depressed me a little bit because it wasn't as interesting as the first one. But anyhow,
Right.
yeah. So moving on. It was a pleasure having you on. And before we do close up, one thing I like to do with the people I've had on is that the last few minutes, all you mate, anything you want to say, anyone you want to talk, shout out or anything you want to say, all you, Juan Adams, go for it.
Yeah, first I want to shout out all my sponsors that were going to be for my fight January 29th, but it ended up canceling. So, just Esteli's Law Firm. I wanted to shout out Smile White, New Mexico, obviously. Just thank my sponsors for their continued support. Big thing. Follow my social medias. I don't tweet as much as I should anymore. Twitter is kind of a dead space to
Boring
me,
place.
but
Yeah.
I try and keep my Instagram pretty entertaining. So it's
Yeah.
chosen 1285. You guys can follow me on there. Um, and that's it, really. If any of you guys, I don't play Pokemon with people anymore. I don't do online battles. But if you want to see my teams, I'm glad to show you. And yeah, that's it, man. Just follow me on Instagram. Uh, Shoot me a message if you have any questions. I'm always pretty accessible. And
Brilliant.
that's it.
Yep, brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was it for Juan Adams. One, thank you for joining in. I'm going to put his socials down in the description below. And once again, thank you for joining in. I hope all of you enjoyed. And Juan, I look forward to having a Pokemon battle with you sometime in the future. I got some emulators too myself. And that being said, thank you for joining in once again. That's what that was, and we'll see you on the next one.